Are we in the right meeting? Just checking IWN. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We'll give everybody just a few minutes to join. Good to see people coming in. It's very hot in Europe. I know that. Hope everyone's staying cool. You should see the chat on the right-hand side if you want to say hi, introduce where you're from. And we'll get started at 2 minutes past. Michael from New Zealand. Whoa, welcome. Do you live there, Michael, or there just on your holiday, joining in? Local, good on you. I guess it's pretty late, 9 o'clock in the evening for you, so thank you for staying with us. Okay, we'll get started, and this is being recorded as well. Hello, Sarah Jane from Northall. Good to see you. Welcome to the June edition of our IT Community Admin Meetup. In this session, we are joined by a special guest. As you have myself and Bart. Bart, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, of course. Hello all. My name is Bart. And then I'm in Ali's team. I'm responsible for the Benelux and all the Nordic countries.
Perfect, thank you. And so Bart looks after a tool that we have called the Domain Transfer Tool. And we're going to delve into that in a bit more detail this month before going through and looking at the latest product updates. So I'm going to go through, but I'll give you co-presenter options just for later as well. So just a reminder, this is a Google Meet. You're probably familiar with many of these buttons. Maybe keep yourself muted just at all times if possible. There's lots of working from home. We know people have dogs and kids, so please don't interrupt. If you would like to ask a question at any point, though, please do raise a hand. This is a small enough group that we can have live interaction, so you can go through and ask questions whenever you want. If you'd rather just ask a question in the chat, I will keep monitoring the chat window at all times throughout today, so you can type your question instead. That's absolutely fine too. And so we're going to go through and look at the entity transfer tool or the domain transfer tool. It has a couple of names and some of the considerations and the watch points around that. So a couple of sessions ago, I looked in detail at some migration options with you, and we looked at some of the data import tools that you get within the Google Admin Console to bring elements in from Microsoft, and we've now got support for Gmail as well within there, which is really great. One of the things we discussed as well was using some third-party tools like CloudM to handle migrations. And one of the offerings that we've had for many years in the enterprise sector is the domain transfer tool. And we've now got approval to launch that to education institutions as well. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Bart, who's going to take us through a bit of a deep dive through the product.
Yes, thank you. So what we are going to talk about is the entity transfer tool, or the domain transfer tool. And what it does is, with that entity transfer tool, we merge two Google Workspaces together. And this can be, of course, a complete school group or a municipality with multiple Google Workspace domains, and we can going to all merge them together. But bear in mind, it will be a migration per migration. Each domain has just one migration. We can't do a migration of a multiple domains at once. But the beauty of it is there's no business interruption, and the data will stay in the Google environment. And that's the big difference if we look at the third-party tools there are, like Cloud-N. So how it works. Your secondary domains and alias domains will migrate to the new domain. If you want to take your primary domain with you, we have to change the primary domain with your with a placeholder domain, and then it can change to the destination. So we have the source and we have the destination. Of course, we can also migrate all OU structures. So you have to think before the migration of the OU structure of the complete centralized domain, but the domains of the OU structure you have decided in your source domain will merge to the destination domain as well. And with the transfer entities, it includes users, groups, mail, calendar, shared drives, my drive, and the resource calendars. What we don't migrate is, and that's, I will mention it as well, but bear in mind, Classroom is not migrated. So all of the documents you created in your Classroom, that's in your drive, so in my drive. So that will be merged, but the Classroom itself, it doesn't. We also have a different part. So this was a full migration of a full domain, but if there's a school leaving your school group, and it then we have the this one that can change your secondary domain to another destination. So this is not a full domain migration, but only that secondary domain with the OU structure that can migrate to a different OU. But we're going to focus on the full domain transfer. So the benefits, the data never leaves Google. The entity are left intact, content sharing is retained, and this is a big one. If you use every other tool except the entity transfer tool, your documents that is shared at this moment with multiple users in your domain, it will be shared in the new target domain. There's no need of changing the sharing because it just picks up and it will be available in your new target domain. Low operational complexity. Of course, you need some of the preparations. We have I've built a checklist what you have, what you need to do, and it's still quite some work, but it's less work than if you use third-party tools. But because we are doing all the work, it usually completes within 24 hours, but there's no downtime. So it can be done on a regular Tuesday within school hours, and every user can work, can email, can do everything. And this is and the users don't have any feeling that they're changing the domains. The only thing is that admins, they will lose. Ollie, I can't change.
Have you added slides recently?
Yeah, I think my internet was down.
Where do you need to get to? Limitations?
Yeah. There it is. My functionality in Meetup is not working, but I think that's a limitation of me.
I think it's my. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, is it you? I can do the. So I was telling the only downtime there is in the is that the Google admin is losing the ability to go to the admin console 4 hours. There are some limitations. So licenses are not transferred. So there must be enough matching licenses in the destination to support incoming users to the source, and the user will be assigned at the same license in the destination they had in the source. So for example, if you have all users on Google for Education Plus license, you have to have enough Plus licenses in your target domain as well. If you have only fundamental licenses, you have to have enough licenses to add these users in your target domain. That's a really good question. No, the CEU licenses will not be, but that's on the next slide. I will come back on that. The CEU licenses will not be migrated. So this is all licenses. Gemini licenses, Plus licenses, standards, and CEU licenses. Identity merge and deduplications is not supported. So please, if you use this tool, don't create new users in your destination domain. We will migrate them, but we can't consolidate multiple users. Limitations. There's some limitations in the migration. There's a limitation of 75,000 users per migration. I know in the EU isn't common to have so much users, but we have customers that have so many users or exceed these users. There's no going back. So once the process is initiated, there's no rolling back procedure, and there's no midterm license migration. So if you have a 3-year or 2-year contract for Plus licenses, and even a 1-year Plus license, and you do this midterm, we can't migrate the licenses in your destination domain. So bear in mind that if you have your source domain, you have an active Plus license, you have to, and in your target domain, you have also an active standard Plus or Gemini license, or a standard or a Plus license. You have to increase the license in your destination domain, and if you have an active contract, you have to pay double. So bear in mind that it's not my advice to do this midterm in your Plus or standard license. So another one, the constraints, license in Gemini, we discussed this at the previous slide. Chrome OS licenses. If you have enrolled all of your Chromebooks, this will block the migration. But what we can do is, if you deprovision all Chromebooks. We can migrate in a separate ticket. We can migrate them to the target domain. So there's a way to get this done, but we can't migrate them with this tool. But there's a separate process for this, and we will help you get this process started if you are interested in using the entity transfer tool. So Google Classroom is not supported. Oh yes, of course, Ali. They had to be manual re-enrolled. So you can't use the zero-touch enrollment for the Chromebooks. Google Classroom is not supported. So the classroom itself stays in the source environment. Certain basic functionalities may persist in the post transfer. So what it does, the source domain and the target domain, because the users are in the source domain in the Google Classroom, they see and can use the Google Classroom. Eventually, the source domain will be deleted. So you will lose access to that Google Classroom. So for now, if you whitelist that domain, you can copy that Google Classroom, and you have the classroom itself copied in your new target domain. All of the documentation, all the documents are migrated into your drive, so you can add them in your classroom as well. Great question. The IT admin has to be the one that deletes the domain. As Google, we say that you get 3 months of the migration period. Spaces, group chats are not supported. We can't migrate them. And guest users, that's a new functionality within the Google admin console. There are, we don't support that as a migration. Account merging, we discussed it before. So please don't add the users in your destination domain, because we are migrating them from the source to the target, and the Google Cloud projects, they will not be transferred. So please, there's a different migration process for that. If you want to get your the GCP projects with you, there's a different migration for that, but it's not within this this domain transfer tool. Any questions for now? Great.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Back to you, Ollie.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go through, and I've had to move rooms. So let me just go through and remove my old self, and then I can go ahead and share again. Thank you, Bob. Super clear. If there's any further questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat whilst Bart's here. But if not, I will move on to our next section, which is all around some product updates that we've launched in the last month since we met. And there's been a lot. So lock in, grab a tea or coffee, and be prepared to be amazed. So we've added a few things which are quite small through to quite big, and these are just in a time of release order. So one, we've added some accessibility functionality, so inverting content color under the mouse cursor, which is really, really useful for some users. We've also launched this, which is really cool. So if you disable a device now in the admin console, what will happen as soon as it comes online, it will then give a pretty approximate location as to where that is. So really, really useful if you've got any devices that you suspect of being lost or stolen. Obviously, the fact the device is disabled will persist, but the ability to geolocate that is going to be really useful From a privacy perspective, obviously the lock screen maintains and the tracking data will expire after 24 hours. But a really neat tool, definitely worth trying out over the summer holidays if you're in Northern Hemisphere, and have a look at how that works. We've got some better Android-based room devices certified by Google Meet, which might be useful if you've got any of those in your schools or universities. We've now got better support from Google Meet in sending 1080 HD video from the Chrome OS meeting room hardware as well. And we've also got the Workspace policy API, which has had a massive update in that now we've got full kind of like write support for this as well. So many of you will be aware that we've had read support of Workspace policy for a while. But with the write element, you can now go through and programmatically create, update, and delete currently DLP rules, plus a number of other things that have launched from here as well. So if you're interested in that, please have a quick Google search and find out what you can do with the Workspace Policy API. If you're a Google for Education partner, there's some wonderful things that you can now do to support schools and universities you work with using your expertise and technical skills. We've now got some better support in Google Classroom as well. So something called rubrics, which are kind of like marking assessment grids. Right now, or up until about a year ago, you used to have to upload these in a very, very specific spreadsheet format. We've now got much better support using AI to basically take a photo of like a marking criteria and automatically convert that into a class rubric that can be digitally gone through and marked. So really useful for things like coursework that students might be doing, where students need feedback against specific assessment objective. Really, really easy for teachers to go through and use. And we've also got approvals, a kind of minor update there, but it's really useful. If you use the document approval feature, we had feedback that people got frustrated that during that process, the document was completely locked and couldn't really be minor edited. So we've now got support to allow people to continue to edit the document whilst it's going through that approval process, which is really, really useful. Hopefully, if you use approvals, you'll be very happy with that. We've now got Ask Gemini in Drive that has support for Gmail threads, which is really useful. So if you're asking questions about specific files, you can go through and see whether there was conversations about that drive in a Gmail chat. Really, really useful to go through and get deeper insights. And then we've also got DLP policies for Google Calendar now. So you can scan titles, descriptions, locations. If there's any sensitive data within calendar events, you can go through and block those from being externally shared. Really, really useful. And as a result of that, we're also bringing labels into calendars as well. So if there's specific events that you definitely don't want external users from being able to join or being manually invited, there are DLP policies that you can go through and apply to those now as well. And then we've also got some specific DLP policies for targeting file extensions, file names, and file types as well, which is really useful. We also have a proximity matching, which is really useful. So you can go through and only trigger flags when they're found together. This is something that we use as part of our default connectors, but you might, for example, have a date in a document, and then the word date of birth might also be there. Traditionally, they would go through, and because they both exist, it might misflag a certain document. You can now configure proximity detectors. So only now, if it's date of birth followed by a date, would your rule then consider that actually being some PII information, as an example. So some useful tools that you can customize in there as well. I know that many of our organizations in Finland have been asking this for a while. So hopefully great that you can see them and use that. And this, sorry, I double skipped there. This is a wonderful, wonderful feature. So we've now on Google Drive on Android bought this functionality to build in a multi-page document scanner. So incredibly useful for all sorts of things. So if you've got a textbook that you need to digitize very quickly, you can simply hold and flick through the pages. Does an incredible job. Or maybe there is an exam paper that's physically printed that you want to move to Google Drive in order to distribute to students. Or perhaps you've got some handwritten essays or some artwork that you want to scan in multiple and then go through and do something with Gemini. This is a really great, useful tool for kind of educators and students alike. And this has been available for a few weeks now, and it's a really, really useful tool. So please play around with that if you have Google Drive on Android. And then we've got better data protection for your managed third-party apps, so you can choose or block whether users can try and copy and paste between those. So useful if you're using other external tools, you've got more control around that. We've now got this organize my files using Gemini. If you use the Google AI Pro for Education, really useful if you have, like me, a very cluttered Google Drive with all of your files all over the place. You can now get some smart AI assisted organization. It's only your Google Drive, it's not your kitchen or your garage at home, unfortunately, for now. And then looking back to last month, we got some learning goals. So we've now got inbuilt support standards for a number of different countries. So please go through, check in Classroom, see whether the country you work with is on there as well. So it live links, and once you choose a curriculum, it will automatically go through and detect whether that assignment is assessing about a specific curriculum content. Really useful because you can then go through and get some deep insights on how students are tracking against specific standards rather than just general assignments and grades there. So really, really useful for teachers, but also if you're exporting this data into BigQuery as an example, all of that data around the learning standard will also go through as well. So you can analyze on there as well. And obviously that also ports into the inbuilt Classroom analytics tool. We've also got, if you use client-side encryption is a really powerful tool where it basically allows you to keep your data on Google Drive infrastructure if you bring your own encryption key. So no one, even if they had a legal way to request access your data, would be able to access your data unless you provided the encryption key for them. We've got better support on the output to take that into PowerPoint as well. One thing that we're working really hard on is making it super easy for you to keep your data using CSE, but also go through, and if you need to export that, make that really easy for you to get that data back if you need as well. I've got a question in the chat I see from Robert. Are the migrated users the same identity or recreated? Context is if the process retains links to consumer and third-party services. But this is about the entity transfer tool, domain transfer tool. The users stay exactly the same. They are simply just moved from one organization to the other. So the end user experience from any links with third-party services, for example, we have what's called on the back end a Gaia ID, so a unique ID of that user that persists, and so that will stay. So all of their Chrome profiles, etc., would be untouched. Hopefully, I've got that right, Bob. Good stuff. And then we've also added some really, really useful functionality into Google Drive. So into Gemini. So it used to be that if you wanted to share a Gemini chat, or perhaps even a Canvas web application that you built in Gemini, your only option was to enable people to share all of their links publicly. And that was a bit of a risk in the education environment. What we've now done is brought Gemini conversation and media and Canvas application sharing into the Drive ACL interface. So it will mean that if you have a Drive policy that stops files being shared externally, then it's going to stop users from being able to share their Drive conversations externally as well. But what it also opens up is the ability for teachers, as an example, or a faculty member at university to create a web application in Canvas and then go through and share that with their users in Google Classroom or Moodle or wherever via a Google Drive link. Users can go through and access that. Up until now, we've had educators be really creative. They've exported the code, taken that to a Google site, uploaded the code, published it, and then shared that with their students. But this is going to allow a one-click, get a link to Google Drive to share that Canvas and any other conversation, which is really, really useful. The ability to share is currently only available to 18 plus, but users will be able to access those files if they are under 18 as well. I'm sure if my internet's broken again. I have a double. Yep, I just had two slides exactly the same, so I'm not losing my mind. We've also got in connected sheets, we're bringing in some BigQuery ML to help you identify data anomalies and outliers. Workspace Studio flows. So if you've used Workspace Studio, it's a wonderful tool to automate actions within Workspace using what's called flows or connectors. And it's now possible for admins to go through and choose exactly which Workspace Studio steps their users can access. So they may, for example, be happy for something to be triggered from a calendar activity or a Google Meet conversation, but perhaps they don't want their users going through and creating flows that start and automated by receiving an email, because they still want users to actually reply as a human to emails rather than just have Gemini do all of their job. It's now up to the admins to go through and configure which starters users can or can't use. And then we've also got some support for both Schoology and Canvas. So the ability to bring any content from those courses that you're using live and dynamically linked into a notebook LM. So imagine if you've got a full course content in Canvas or Schoology, and coming soon we'll bring in the same functionality to Moodle. You'll be able to sync all of your documents and material from that course into the notebook. This is already rolled out for Google Classroom as well. And so this is what we call like an MCP integration. So we have that for Schoology and Canvas. And as a result of that, we've also changed the way that Google Drive files interact with Notebook LM. Previously, when you added a file from Drive to Notebook, it would just go through and take a one-time snapshot of that content and ground that as a source. But now we have live dynamic syncing. So if you add a Google Drive file, if that Google Drive file updates, it will update the source in Notebook LM. So really useful if you've got big comprehensive spreadsheets, or perhaps like a staff policy handbook. If you update the handbook, it's going to update the notebook automatically. So really, really powerful tool. We've got some better warnings to help people see whether things are being shared externally. So much more granular with exactly what the warnings are. That launched last month. We've also got an integration with Polly, which is like a poll integration. So really useful. Just very quickly, you can add Polly or Polly. I'm not sure how you say that. Probably Polly. And a very quick, easy way to get a poll within a Google chat. Useful if you're planning a team meal, for example, or something like that, and you want to find good dates that work for everyone. And you've probably seen this as well, but last month we updated all of the Google Workspace app icons. It confused the hell out of me for about 2 days, but I've now gotten used to all of these. Hopefully you have too. There's a blog post about the style icons, and there's been a very creative team who've spent hours and hours coming up with all of these files, and you can read that blog post if you want. I didn't find it too interesting, but some of you might. And then we've got better support for Android, as I mentioned, on Google Meet. We've got some better whiteboarding add-ons. So we've added Figma, LucidSpark, and Miro. Now work within Google Meet hardware, which is really useful if you use any of those. And then we've got some really nice language support for messages with Gemini and Google Chat. So we've now added this functionality in French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, and Spanish. So if you have the Google AI Pro license, you can now just converse with Gemini directly in Google Chat in any of those languages. We've got better support for header images in Google Forms. So you can now add things from your Google Drive, search Google Images directly as well. Also link with your Google Photos if you need to. We've got context-aware access for all of your SAML applications as well. So you can apply a global context-aware access rather than all of the individual ones. So right now, if you have SAML access to Canva and Adobe and a few others, you had to apply context-aware access at all of those individually. You can now go through and apply these to all of your SAML applications in one fail swoop, which is very useful. We now have Datadog, which I don't think is really that used by education institutions. But you can now converse with Datadog if you use that directly in Google Chat, which is useful. And this I went through a few months ago with you all. We've got really, really useful direct seamlessly importing users from Microsoft to Google Workspace as well. But we've got a number of other tools which I know you're very familiar with, such as Directory Sync. But this is just a very quick way to get started with bringing all of their data in one fell swoop. We will be, right now it supports up to 10 users, but but coming soon we'll be expanding support for thousands of users. So it'll just be a one-time import covering all of your OneDrive, your Outlook directly into the Google services without having to migrate everything manually and individually one by one. So a really cool tool set. Watch this space on that one. We've got support now in Workspace Studio. We added gems the previous month. We've now got support for Notebook LM. So really useful if you've got like a few hundred source Notebook LM where you want to go through and query something. You can now query your Workspace Studio flows and ground them within your Notebook LM sources, which is really useful. As I mentioned before, we've got Workspace assignments, and Gemini LTI is now publicly available in Moodle. So if you use Moodle as a learning management system, just Google it. It's very simple to go through and set up and configure. And it brings the best of Gemini and the best of Google assignments directly into your Moodle instance. I'm not going to play the video. We've got the ability to add avatars when you convert your presentations into vids. So if you've got existing speaker notes, they'll automatically be pulled through there as well. Coming soon, we've got some really cool support for custom avatars. Should be rolling out in the next few months. So maybe come October, it won't actually be me running these, but just an avatar version of myself. And that's an interesting thought, isn't it? And then we've got some better improvements for Help Me Write in Gmail. This is currently in Google AI Pro for Education, but we're trying to drop this down into Education Plus soon as well. And then we've also got better support for your Google Meet live streams. So we support hundreds and hundreds of users on a Google Meet, but we now got support to adaptively go through and link users out to live stream when it meets with people. It's very rare that you're going to use this, but perhaps you are looking after a whole country's Google Workspace for Education, and there are some live lessons. This is a really useful tool where people can join Meet up to a certain point and then switch to live stream. Cool, and that was all of the updates that I wanted to share with you. And we've had a bit of Q&A, but if there's any questions, feel free to put your thumb up. Maybe what I'll do is, before we go into open questions, just say that we're going to take a little break over the Northern Hemisphere summer. So I don't think we'll have a session July and August, and we'll regroup in September to give everyone a bit of time because we all want to take some vacation. Sorry about that. What I will say is there is some upcoming sessions that are worth you having a look at as well. So we've got a session all around Chrome OS Flex that's happening on July the 2nd. And there's some really nice like whole school live AI training. There are also a couple of sessions that are worth getting involved in. And let me just open some of these today. So if you are K-12, we have a session. Let me just share this with you later on today. So wherever you are, I'm in BST time, so it's 6 o'clock UK time, with all of the What's New for Google for Education ISTE 2026 announcement. So we've just been through what we just launched, but this session will take a deep dive into all of these, the features that we're announcing that we'll be launching in the coming months and year. So definitely worth watching, or at least signing up for that one and re-watching that after that one's been announced. That's coming later today. There is also a session, as I mentioned before, by Fiona, who I see is on this call, about refreshing your device fleet with Chrome OS Flex. And then we've also got a session later on this in July from Drew, one of our colleagues in North America, who's going deep into the Workspace LTI integration using LMS, so Canvas, Moodle, and Schoology. From a higher ed perspective, there is a couple of extra sessions that you might find useful, focused solely on higher education. So we have May from Malaysia, who is the CIO at Taylor's University, talking about implementing AI at scale. So a really interesting conversation, slightly earlier in the day on the 21st of July. It's definitely worth going through there as well. And if you're still around in August, we've got Jay from CDW, who are a Google for Education partner in North America, talking about just some good practice on applying data retention labels to users who are being offboarded from your organization. So that might be an interesting one for you to go through and consider as well. So let's go through and switch back. And I know it's a pretty small group this month, which is nice. So I wonder if we've got any questions here. Hey, Danny, good to see you. So Danny says, there's Gemini and Notebook LM icons not appearing in the waffle for under 18 users. Any solution for this to aid and improve use and adoption? Great feedback. I think we've heard this before. Danny, if you've already got a support ticket on this, let me go through and escalate this, and I'll go through and check a bug. Please feel free to pick up this ticket in there as well, and myself or Fiona on the call can go through and escalate that for you and make sure that's rolled out sorted. We've got a question about the migration tool. Does it support different SKUs? But the answer I think is no.
Correct.
Yeah, so it needs, the SKUs need to match on both the source and the target.
Yes.
But did you say like that this is a paid engagement, right? You did make that clear. This isn't just something free that we offer.
No. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but it's
yeah.
it's a paid feature within Google, and it's $26,000 per domain. So if you have a trust or a school group with 16 different domains, you have to pay 16 times that $26,000.
Yeah, and there are specific country discounts. That is the LinkedIn MSRP price. But yeah, I just want to make that clear. This is probably not a good solution to like a small school to another small school. But if you're merging big tenants, then yes, it is. It's not as cheap as a bar of Kit Kat, of course, but from a value perspective, it can often be comparably better value than using a third party tool or doing something yourself once you get to a significant number. But we just wanted to share it with you. I know this community asks about migration a lot. It is another option that won't be suitable for everybody, but there will be a handful of large institution migrations where it might be the best solution for you.
Yeah, and then on top of that, we have, for example, we have multiple school groups who are using this. For example, they have 16 domains, but they use the domain transfer tool for only 3 of them, and the rest they use GAM or a different tool for the migration because they're a lot smaller.
Cool. Thank you, Bob. Any other questions? There is a feedback survey that we always love you to fill out. And I'll go through and chuck the link to that just in the chat as well. So there's no more questions. There's also a QR code that goes to the same link, I promise, that you can scan on there as well. But it feels like there might be no further questions. And that is absolutely fine, because we can then take 17 minutes back in our lives. Thanks, John. Jonathan Brewer, it might be worth reviewing a session from maybe April, where we went through this in a bit more detail, to all the different options that you have for migrating. And I will go through and dig that out for you. Because we have the previous sessions. I'm just trying to find the exact one because that might be a useful one for you to go through. Pretty sure it was the April session. But please, on this link, you can go through and see all the part sessions on the bottom. I'm just going to go through and check my April session. Yeah, it was indeed April. So I would recommend, Jonathan, if you would like to review all the things that we talk about from a migration perspective, that is your best bet. And you can watch that on. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay cool out there, wherever you are in the world. And we will see you here again in September, and look forward to it.
Bye, everyone.